Looks like it's you that he wants.
I'm not gonna let him kill you. Fear no evil. Fear no evil.
Hi, my name is Christian Morán of LatinHorror.com, and I'm here with Edwin Pagán and the cinematographer of Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Hi.
Ricardo Diaz.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Can you give us like a brief description how it is growing up over there in the south border of Texas?
Yeah, growing up in Mission, McAllen Far, sort of the Rio Grande Valley, as it's called, is a really unique cultural experience. You know, it's predominantly Latino. It's predominantly people who've come across the border and made new lives for themselves right there in South Texas. And so it is this wonderful melting pot of what I would say like sort of Texas vaquero culture, sort of meets like northern Mexico. So the cuisine, the way people dress, it's so specific. And I grew up basically 3 miles from the border. It was really an incredible upbringing, and I'm really grateful to have both influences in my life.
Can you tell us about a little bit about your parents, your background too, as well?
Yeah. My parents were second generation. Their parents came from Mexico, from different parts, and they were born in the Valley. And we're just really big fans of movies. I feel like they came here. My dad loved action movies and westerns. My mom loved romance and rom-coms. And so I think my influences really come from my parents, who came here and just really loved cinema and movies. And it was such a one of the few things at the time in the Valley, sort of an entertainment to do, was to go see movies. So I feel I was lucky to be a part of that through them. That they came here, but their parents came here, and then they had that influence of both American cinema and this Mexican heritage and culture.
What horror movies were you watching that you liked and stuff like that?
My whole family, everyone kind of had their own thing growing up. The kind of like everyone enjoyed their own genres, so to speak. And for me, horror was really introduced to me through my older sister, who is a nutso horror fan. So, the stuff I was growing up watching, she'd bring back all the Child's Play films, which I loved. She was really into like the toy stuff. So I was watching Demonic Toys. I was watching Puppet Master.
Oh, wow.
I was watching Killer Clowns. It was, for some reason, she really did enjoy a lot of the scary, sort of fun. There was a lot of camp to it, so to speak. But I really did love those films. Even, I know it's not technically a horror film, but like Gremlins, which it was like those are the kinds of films my sister grew up loving and that I imprinted on me. But I would say outside of that, like my own taste growing up, Candyman, that first Candyman, just messed me something fierce, something really fierce. And it's not a movie, but I'm gonna sort of come back to my where I grew up. La Llorona was a really big part of growing up in South Texas. They kind of took the story and turned it a little bit to scare us, because where I grew up, it was orchards, a lot of citrus orchards, and so there's a lot of canals. And the whole thing was like, don't you play by the canals. Don't you play by the canals, or La Llorona's gonna come out and she's gonna take you down, and she's gonna drown you just like she did her kids. And for years, I wanted that movie to come out, and they finally made I think a relatively decent one. It was actually really good. I thought I really enjoyed it. But yeah, like those were my influences, like Candyman, Puppet Master, Killer Clowns, and of course all the great Mexican folklore like La Llorona and Cucuy and stuff like that.
You should see this.
What are you doing in our house? You really shouldn't be here.
Oh my God.
I got to see the film before doing this interview, and as you can imagine, someone of my age who got to see the original actually in a real movie house, in 35 millimeter. One of the things I was a little hesitant that comes up, and as we do the old diehards, is like, is the new one going to live up to the expectations after so long exactly? And I was quite pleasantly surprised. Actually, it was really good. I enjoyed the fact that it sort of tied in the narrative. I also enjoyed the fact that visually it sort of also captured the zeitgeist of the original. And I wanted to segue into that because as the film cinematographer, I know that your background, you've done both narrative and sort of commercial work, quite a bit of it. Some of your films have actually garnered recognition and awards and Sundance, etc. But how did you get to working on the current production? I know you and the director have some history, so tell us a little bit about sort of your segue from your personal relationship and then landing the gig here as a cinematographer on this fantastic film.
Thanks for saying that about the movie. That was a big goal for David and I, was to find a way to sort of bridge visually the grindhouse sort of aesthetic of that first film, but sort of bring our own sensibilities, our own visual sensibilities to the franchise. And David and I grew up both in the Valley that I was just talking about. We lived about 45 minutes apart. We didn't know each other. We met in film school at UT in Austin years later, and and remained friends. He's a wonderful visualist in his own right and a great cameraman in his own right. And so when he got the job and the opportunity to work together came up, it was a no-brainer. I think our aesthetics and our sensibilities meshed. And then of course, both of us being UT graduates, it just felt like we owed something to the franchise. Obviously, Toby and Dan Pearl, the original DP, were UT graduates when they made the movie, and so I think it was just a really sort of natural fit for us. And then the biggest goal was for us to find a way to honor the visuals of that first film, the grindhouse aesthetic, but elevate it a little bit and make it in line with some of our sensibilities and some modern sensibilities, because that's a lot of what the film tackles, right? Sort of old versus new, and how those two things collide.
That's right. And tiptoeing on that, one of the things that I noticed is that the palette throughout the film used sort of like warm tones, but contrasted really nicely against some cool cyans, and it peppers throughout the film. Did you guys have any other references aside from that? Did you guys create a lookbook and discuss like sort of other films that perhaps you were bringing in? And you mentioned that there were certain things that you brought in distinctively that were your own. If you could just touch on those a little bit, because I know that the folks that are going to be looking at this particular piece are going to also be people from the creative community that are subscribed to our website, and this is always a fascination, sort of like a little peek behind the scenes, especially when we got a cinematographer on. Give us just a little hint of that process of working with David to sort of bring that look that ultimately became the whole arc of the film.
David and I both had a short prep period on this. It all very much happened rather quickly, getting the movie off the ground. So, what we went into was essentially like 3 days of Zoom conversations where we just hit the core themes and the core story elements and sort of the visual aesthetic that we wanted to be our guiding light. So sort of our bullet points, our Bible, so to speak. And as I mentioned earlier, was sort of this elevated grindhouse aesthetic, right? We still wanted it to be hot and sweaty and gritty and grimy, and there was grain, but we also wanted to kind of give it that modern approach. And part of that modern portion of it was shooting it anamorphic, which we did with Hawk V-Light anamorphics. And then we kept that hot, sweaty Texas vibe. You know, the original was shot in color reversal film, so it's really saturated and really colorful, and we wanted to bring that, but with sort of a modern approach to that, right? That sort of cool cyan, warm, we did some other stuff in the film too. There's a color story there, and that's what we brought to the film, along with just making sure it felt sweaty and hot and humid. That was something that is a little detail that as Texans we were like, we need to feel the humidity from time to time. Right. And so we did that with a specific filter in certain scenes that adds a little halation around hot like posts. And that was kind of our little way of like, how do we make this more Texas?
So Harlow is a ghost town.
We have a vision for this place. All it needs is young blood.
I don't want to live here. This is a chance for people to start fresh somewhere safe.
It's supposed to take place, obviously, in Texas, but you guys shot in Bulgaria. What were some of the instances as you prepped up to that? Because did your background as a commercial cinematographer help sort of ramp up the short period, because you have to really hit the ground running? And how do you supplant Bulgaria for Texas? How does that come about?
Great questions. I think in regards to Bulgaria, I mean, that was a decision that was made before David and I came on, and I think it was a big part of why we were eventually brought on, is because they really needed, as much as possible, Texans' eye on some of the design of the film. And so, at every opportunity we added architectural details that felt more authentic to the interiors and exteriors of our sets. And, we did our best, and I think we succeeded in a lot of places to bring a lot of the details from the first film to this film that were not there before. But look, making Bulgaria look like Texas, we spent so much time inside creepy places in the film that it was a little bit easier to hide that we weren't in Texas. But I will say Bulgaria I think it really passes for parts of West Texas. So I was really pleased with how all that turned out.
Yeah, I take my hat off to you, because your department and your production design team did a really good job.
That credit goes to Michael Perry, the production designer. He did a wonderful job. He did a really wonderful job when we had to be outside in those big city sort of street wides. He did an excellent job making it feel like small town Texas.
Kudos to him and his team.
50 years I've been waiting for this night. Just to see him again.
Who? Leatherface.
One of the things that the director, David, was talking about was the importance of you and him having the connection of living in the valley. Because, I know he made a movie that was about the valley, and now
Tejano,
Tejano. So,
I think it kind of goes to what I said earlier about having that shortened prep period. Just growing up in a really unique part of the country, like the Rio Grande Valley, bonds us in a way and creates a shorthand about life and just how we view things. I won't go into the many valley-isms, but just having that shorthand, because we have such a similar upbringing, and because so much of our time growing up in the valley was spent at the movie theater, because that was just one of the few things we had to do, sort of entertainment-wise down there. just really kind of like gives us a shorthand and allows us to sort of bring that shorthand to our collaboration. And thank goodness we had it, because we had so little time to prep the film. But I think ultimately our collaboration, our friendship ultimately is what helped us succeed.
I don't know if the cinematographer's saying which one is your favorite scenes or sequences, or almost like, you know, who wants to say who their favorite child is. But in terms of which scene from this Texas Chainsaw Massacre was your most fun to shoot?
Oh, the most fun to shoot. There were so many fun scenes to shoot. I would say go back, watch the trailer that they released this week. But the bus scene. The bus scene that you get a glimpse of at the end.
And we won't give it away. I got to stop Christian. He's a spoiler. He's Mr. Spoiler.
There's a scene on a bus. That's all I'm going to say. There's a scene on a bus. It was not only just tons of fun to sort of create the choreography, we'll say, of that scene, but also the technical challenges from a photographic standpoint of creating this sort of lightning begins, this very realistic beginning with these lightning strikes that turns into sort of a more creative approach to amplifying the sort of trauma of that scene was really fun. So yeah.
And I think that scene gives it the badge that it deserves in terms of being part of the Massacre franchise. So excellent.
I didn't say anything. I said nothing. I just said there's a bus scene, but it's a lot of fun. I think everyone's going to have a really a scary and good time with it.
Well, Ricardo, thank you very much for coming on to LatinHorror.com. I just want to say I saw the film, and it was one of those things that, you know, as a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, I started off like this, yeah,
I did too. I did too.
And, you know, once, you know, it got rolling, I started clapping. You know, it was a fun, exciting movie, you know, to watch. And, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, I'm going to tell people to go, hey, you know, go enjoy, get people to come to your house and watch it on Netflix on February, was it the 18th that's going to start?
February 18th.
Enjoy it, because it is, a movie that you need to share and watch, you know. So,
watch with the crowd. Definitely watch with the crowd.
Yes.
Well, we wish you all the best going forward, Ricardo, and we hope to see more of your work going forward. You know, you're definitely a rising star, and I think you just put your thumbprint on this particular movie, and we can't wait to see more of your work going forward.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Really do. And thank you for having me. I appreciate everything you do in getting our voices out there to the rest of the world. So thank you.